Thursday. I hope you all are having a great week and having some time to be creative and do things. Today it's week 23. It's time for our design reveal. So we're making fringe earrings today, which I will fully admit that I never made fringe earrings before this week. So this will be new. But we are going to do it. I did start a little ahead of time because it's a long project and I actually have to be off at 1 because I have an appointment to go to. So I cheated a little, but there's a ton of videos out there. If you're not a seed beater and you don't know how to do brick stitch, you can learn. And I'll try to point a couple out that are really easy starters. But anyways, we are making those fringe earrings. We also have to use a skull in our design, use silver, use metal beads, and it has to be inspired by Santa Fe. So let's go ahead and flip this over and I'll show you what I'm doing to incorporate all of those elements. I'm going to zoom way in because we're working with little teeny beads today. So I'm going to have to really watch whether I'm on the camera or not. All right, so like I said, fringe earrings. So fringe just has to have some little dangly things down below, right? So we'll have that. So for skulls, I'm incorporating the silver plated hematite skulls. So that also incorporates my silver. And then I have to use metal beads. So I've got some metal spacer beads. Hey, Lorraine, thanks for joining me. So these metal spacer beads are metal and they're also in silver. And then I have to do something inspired by Santa Fe. So, you know, when I go to Santa Fe, you do see lots of, I tend to be there in the fall, so I see a lot of sugar skulls and such. But I talked a little bit about sort of Santa Fe inspiration. So for years there was something they called Santa Fe style. It was kind of a big joke because people would like totally go overboard. But you get some sort of, you know, pinks and turquoises and, you know, silvers and stuff. So that's what I'm using here today. And let me, if I can move my stand a little closer to me, because I am using this beading board. And as always, I have too much stuff on my... But I've got some little tiny turquoise beads here. I've got some pink. Then I'm going to use a little blue just because I needed a third color. And I've got some silver. And what we're going to end up making... So I've been messing around with fringe earrings. I went ahead and made one because, like I said, these take a while. So this is actually what we're going to make today. So I've got my metal beads, I've got my skull, and then I've got my sort of Santa Fe colors and my fringe here, right? So that's what we're going to make today. I started doing a little bit of this brick stitch. So the top of this is brick stitch. I will say I cheated a little bit on learning to design these. I'm using a design from this... I ordered this book that's just graph paper, so you can graph out these designs, but, you know, you can just color them in to do yours. There's also a bunch of free resources out there where you can get graph paper, which I recommend doing it, unless you're one of those that can just look at something and make it. My other one, I actually made one where I made a skull. Hi, Cleo. My cat is saying hello. Hi, Cleo. We're not going to say hello, though. So I made a skull with fringe. I have to make a second one but there was no way we were going to make this live because it took me forever. So, and I forgot, I didn't put any metal beads in there. So, but I was actually thinking what I'll do is I'll put a metal bead on my ear wire and it'll be made out of silver. So, so just real quick, you know, like I said, there's brick stitch. You can finish off the top of your earring. A lot of people use these wire guards. I had to make sure I'm staying on the camera here. You can use wire guards. It gives you a little more support. What I did on this one is I just put some beads in a loop because I didn't want the wire guard under the bead. I just thought it looked better with beads on this one. So anyways, there we are. So we are going to continue. Like I said, I went ahead and started this because, first of all, watching me try to thread a needle on a live would have been too much entertainment. You guys would have just been overwhelmed with the excitement. And so I did a few rows, so the hope that we can get done on time here. So this is brick stitch, and I have to say, prior to this, I worked mostly in peyote. I like peyote, but what I have learned is for brick stitch, it's important, one, that you use all your beads from the same supplier, so they'll be similar in sizes, right? So I'm using all Czech Preciosus, which some people recommend against because they're not always uniform, but they're not bad. So it's gonna be a little wonky, but it's okay. I thought about using Delicas, but didn't have the colors I wanted. Anyways, so like I said, I would just recommend using all beads from the same manufacturer when you're making your brick stitch part, right? Now, on the fringe, I added some bugle beads, so they happen to be made by the same, you know, Preciosa, but those wouldn't matter, right? You could use things on the fringe that are different sizes, which like we did here, and we're going to continue to do here. So, and I will say, even though this was a pattern that was in that book of graph paper, it's a little awkward, you know, and so a lot of people do like double drop. I don't even know if my terminology is correct. I do think that's easier and quicker. This particular one happens to be single, and the border row is only a single row, which is strange, okay? But, so when you start a row, you have to put 2 beads on, and we are just gonna dive right in here. See if we can get most of this done. Because I will say that the fringe even takes a while. But when you start a new row, you come around and you skip the first loop, but you go into the second loop, right? So you're adding 2 beads. This is the only time you add 2 beads. Well, this and at the very beginning, right? You're doubling up. So bottom line, this is a kind of an awkward pattern because it's all single. It's the single one. It's a little harder to show. I thought about doing an example, just you know, just showing you guys how to start it with bigger beads. But like I said, there's a few videos out there, and I know, I think Lorraine, aren't you a seed beater? So I'm sure you know more about all this stuff than I do. So, because I didn't like working with, I will admit, I like to do quick projects And working with seed beads is not necessarily a quick project. So, hey Marianica, thanks for joining. We are making fringe earrings today, so I apologize that it's going to be a little boring and repetitive because that's what we're doing. But like I said, I tried to get a good start on here. I am working on this bead board. If you're into seed beading and doing, peyote or brick stitch or even loom. So the other side is for loom designs, and you can just lay out your designs. It's great. I use this when I'm coming up with new designs, or if I just want to lay out my beads, it makes it quicker as I'm going through the project. If you're reading a pattern, you could certainly just work off your pattern if that's what works for you. But this board, it's from OG's, I think that's what it's called. And I bought it at the Tucson. They usually have a booth at the fall Tucson show. And it's pretty cool. It comes with like tweezers and scissors and pretty much everything you need to plan out your project. All right, there we go. We added a row, yay. And then I get my tail, there we go. The other thing to think about when you're doing all this stuff is what kind of thread you're going to use. I'm using Fireline just because it's my preferred. It doesn't unravel and things like that. But a lot of people don't recommend it for the fringe part. But I'm still working on figuring out if I have stuff that actually works for that kind of thread. When I was trying some of the stuff I had, it was unraveling on me and it was not working very well. So I went back to Fireline, and my fringe part, I'm making fairly heavy weighted fringe, so it's not a problem of it, being out of shape. So, anyways, you'll have to, Lorraine, you'll have to share some of your seed bead designs in the group. I love to see what kind of things you've made. I know you've made a couple projects for the challenges with seed beads. These pink beads have really tiny holes compared to the other beads. I don't know why. And they're all, I said, the same brand, but, oh, and the other thing that I know the samples that I was studying, and they said, you always want to work from the same side of the project, so don't flip it around. You'll get a more even look to your project. So I'm trying to do that. I haven't tried it different ways, so I don't know if it I don't know if it does make a difference or not, because I haven't tried it doing it from both sides. So. Lorraine, have you ever made, do you make bezels for cabochons with seed beads? That's one of the things I want to try. I've been watching a few videos and stuff. The problem is having all the different sizes of seed beads that you need. All right, let's see what's... working off my, just looking at the other earring I made. So I'm trying to make sure I keep that design. Also having a little trouble with making sure I always get underneath my thread. I've had to go back through a few times because I've undone what I just did. Anyways, all right. Yeah, I have quite a few cabochons, which I was always going to put metal bezels on them because I have taken classes in metalsmithing, but I just don't end up doing it. One of these days, right? Excuse me. So I hope everybody's having decent weather. We've really hit the heat's turned on here. You like making earrings and bracelet? Yeah. I mean, I've always worn more. I'm more into making my earrings and bracelets than I am my like necklaces, but I go through stages where I wear them a lot and other times when I don't, so. Right. So, we are going to put, whoop, I picked up 3 beads. Didn't mean to get 3 beads, I only needed 2. And we will see if we can get our loop on fairly quickly. I'm sure all you guys are seeing is my hand because I have a tendency to pull it out from under where the camera is, huh? I'm going to go through this bead one more time. Now the other thing, you know, make sure you're not using too thick a thread because you don't want to not be able to get through the beads multiple times. And I am using 4-pound fireline with the idea that it'll swing better when I make the fringe. So to make your loop, what did I used 6 beads. You know, you could probably use more than that. It just depends on how big a loop you want to make. Which earring are you thinking? The big skull or the ones I'm making right now? My skulls are a little out of season since and then I'm going to go back up through this loop again because I want to give it, you know, a little more support. So I'm going through all the beads just so there's a second layer here. Then we are going to sew down and probably should have put a odd number of beads there. The one I'm making right now. Okay. I will think about that. I would definitely at least share the pattern if you want to, you know, use your own seed beads. So. All right, now I am just sort of zigzagging down through my brick stitch so that I can get to the bottom and start putting the fringe on. There's no right or wrong, just make sure you're not leaving thread showing. All right, now I have to get over to the side. So I'm just going to go up through these beads and then make sure I come down on this side one here. All right, so for the fringe on this, I used some silver beads, and then I'm using these bugle beads, which I'm gonna have to get more out because I know I don't have enough out here. And I've got just some silver spacer beads, and whatever you want. I will say, Lorraine, if I were to put a kit together, you would have different spacer beads because this is the end of my pack. Although I might have another package of them. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So got all the pieces there, and yeah, the other weird thing about this design, and like I said, it was not my, well, I mean, the outline was not really mine, but first of all, like I said, I don't have a base row, and then they have more fringe rows than base, so you're still sort of doing a row. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pieces of fringe, but I actually only have a 10-piece row. And that's another thing, you know, the designs seem to be a little easier to work up if you start with an odd number of beads. So this was kind of a odd thing, but they offered it. So all right, so the first one I am just going to put on a bugle bead, and then just doing a pink bead for color, and a bugle, and then my metal bead. These are kind of heavy, and then I'm just using a small turquoise bead on the bottom to get it up there. So when you're putting fringe, you come straight down from a bead. Normally you would come straight down from your base row. This, like I said, this one's off to the side. So once you have all your beads on there, you skip over the bottom bead because it's going to basically hold your bead on there. And then you just come back up and you come through the bead on the on your base row, right? So I'm going to go up a couple beads just to tighten this on there. I'm feeling that I don't have enough wire to finish this. All right, then I'm going to come back down. And I guess I will come through the second one, but it's not really, when I come back up, it's not going to be that second one. And actually, you know what? I don't want to be there. I end up with a lot of thread showing because I am not, like I said, I haven't figured all this out yet. So I'm actually going to go down through the same one because I actually want to go between these two beads at the bottom, because remember I have extra things. So I want the next one to be longer, so I'm adding one silver bead. And then I add my bugle, my pink bead. I don't know why I have a bugle over here, but that's okay. You can't see my, yeah, I'm not surprised. All right. Let me, all right, so again, we've got, so I added a bead, a bugle, so I'm making it just a little bit longer than the last one. Again, I'm going to skip over that bottom one. And then come back through all these beads. And this time I'm going to come up through my second bead. Oh, because I'm looking at the wrong side here, right? All right, let's flip this over so we're actually working the direction I want to work. All right. So I'm going to come back up through this second bead. And I'm going to pull it now. You know, if you're, what you have to do is just sort of adjust that bottom bead while you tighten to make sure you're to make sure you pull this through. And you know, sometimes it can take a little maneuvering. I think putting the fringe on is not as straightforward. Because you just have to keep kind of, if you pull down on that end and then pull up with your thread, and you want it tight, not necessarily super tight, but all right, now, like I said, this one's a little odd in where you hook the fringe into, so we are going to come up through these other beads, and then I want to come down this one because the fringe is sitting between these two. All right, so now I want to make it longer, so I'm going to add 2 silver, and you know, you could do this in whatever color you wanted. I just wanted something a little different. And like I said, each one you go up until you get to the center. And if you hold your beads up, you know, close to the work, I'm going to move this thread tail is getting in my way. Then you should have less trouble adjusting that tightness. I don't know why after doing this for a year and a half, I still have troubles keeping my hands on the screen, huh? All right, now I am going to go up a bead just to tighten this up. And like I said, I'm just sort of weaving it in a couple beads so that it stays tight. You don't want it to loosen up. Ouch. So with this design, so I have to go back down through the one that I just attached that one back to. All right, and this one we are going to add 3 silver beads so that it dangles a little longer. Now, if you wanted to, you could make all your fringe the same length if you wanted it kind of squared off at the bottom. I don't think there's any rules. You just have to have dangles. All right. And we'll put our, again, our bottom hold bead. I thought about trying to make this in a bigger sized bead so you guys could actually see what I was doing. I suppose it could be made into a pendant in a larger size. All right, so now I'm going to go up this next bead over. And make sure you don't accidentally loop your thread around your fringe piece. Because I have done that. And then you end up with weird threads sticking out. So we may not finish this on screen today, but hopefully you guys are getting the idea. It's like I said, I have an appointment, so I have to be off at 1 o'clock my time. All right, so our next one, we're adding 4. So the next 3 are all going to be the same size, and we are adding 4 silver beads. So each time it's, you know, just one bead longer. And quite honestly, these metal beads, you know, they're kind of, they're a little bit heavy. So you could certainly use something smaller and lighter weight. You know, like if I was using real silver, they would be lighter, but these are brass. And, you know, when you're going back up the fringe, you want to make sure you don't skip any beads accidentally. And I gotta attach it to my I apologize for my hand not being on here as much as it should be. I need stronger glasses, I think, for doing this. So I don't have to look as close. I am going to the eye doctor today, so who knows? I may be getting a stronger readers. All right, so the next three are, or the next two are the same length. So the 4 beads. Really awkward how far to the right I actually have to hold my hand to keep it on camera, because my workspace, I'm used to working in the middle of my workspace, but I think I always work off to the right. So we are actually moving along here. We might make it. Oops. If I don't do stupid things. Right now, I'm more worried that I'm going to run out of thread, but it's stronger. Yeah, you know what? I have some somewhere. I just need to actually pulling them out, but you know, it makes it hard for me to do other things. But all right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're on the second side. So our last 4 bead one, and then we will be decreasing our size. So we go back up. And like I said, I don't think I'm going to have enough thread here, but we'll go until we have to replace it. And I should have, what I should have done was had another needle here. threaded, so if I needed it, I didn't have to do it on live video, but we'll see. All right, so we're gonna go up there. So, you know, it's a little awkward, like I said, with this particular design being just a single row as opposed to a double row. It also means sewing it in there is a little more time consuming. All right, so now we're going down to 3. Keep your fingers crossed that we'll make it with our thread, but I think even some of my base row is a little crooked, but I guess straightening them out when I put these other rows in here, so. Two more, or actually 3 more, I think. You know what? It looks like a, oh, there it is. I was gonna say, I thought I had just enough beads. It was hiding from me, that's why. So we do have 3 more. 3 more rows to go. Which I do not think, like I said, I have enough thread. Okay, maybe just short. So I may have to add the other one on after we finish, since I think this is the other reason why I don't like to do, I like to do seed beading, but not as a live, because I feel like it's very repetitive to watch. Which gets kind of boring. And it's so small that you guys can't actually really see very well what I'm doing, because I can barely see what I'm doing. And I'm up close to it. Yeah. All right, So let's see if we can get one more on here before we have to use our threads. So we're down to just one bead, or one silver bead for our spacer. This is gonna be darn close. But, you know, don't forget we have to wind our thread back in so it stays. So, well, I'm glad it's not boring. So. Like I said, when I put this card in the deck, I was a little nervous about it, since I hadn't really made things. Something got, yeah. Oh, my thread got around my other row of fringe. It's not helpful, so we're going to go backwards and see if we can fix that. All right. There we go. Yeah, I think I did better on this one as far as lining things up. Along the bottom here. I gotta try not to get it stuck around this. Sorry, I'm having troubles talking and seeing what I'm doing, but and I am going to, you know what, I'm going to stop here because I am going to have to use a new thread for putting that last one on. But so what I'll do is just make the rest of the earring real quick, and then I'll add my last piece later. So, but there we go. There's 10 of the 11 pieces. Let me just tie this, or weave this off real quick, just because I don't want the needle on here while I'm doing my next steps. Okay, so the last thing to do is, like I said, add thread, and then add that last piece of fringe. I think when I made the other one, I ended up adding a new thread sooner, so I didn't run out on the fringe, but it'll be okay. So I'm just winding this in randomly, making sure I end up in a few circles so it doesn't come undone, because you don't want your beadwork to come apart, right? All right, one more, and then we'll, like I said, we'll finish the earring, and I'll add that last piece of fringe later. So there's that. All right, now I want to add our skull on there, so I'm just going to do some quick wire wrapping. We'll So I want to make, you know, a decent size loop. I don't want it to be too tight, but I don't want it to fall off. Like I said, I probably should have put an additional bead in there so that the thread wasn't what's sitting on there, but you know, earrings don't put a whole lot of pressure. All right, now I'm just wrapping this around and being careful where I'm holding it so that I don't crush my seed beads, because it's very easy to do that. These are 11s, so I'm using 11 size 11 check seed beads. I like to use, I certainly do like to use the Japanese ones that are more more standard. All right, my thing is hanging funny, but we can adjust it. So let's just do our other loop real quick. Hold on to that. Do a couple reps. Trim that. Now, before I tighten it down too much, I do want to make sure that I have things hanging or go in the right direction. So I'll want my loops actually parallel to each other. So the one on the top has to face forward. The one that connects to the earring part faces sideways. There we go. And then we have our, so we want to make sure our skull is facing, you know, the same direction as our bottom thing. I mean, they'll swing around a little bit, but if you tighten up your loop, it won't move around. And then I had the oh yeah, the ear wire we made the other day. I'm using those, so the plain ones. I figure there's enough design here that I don't need anything fancy on my ear wires, but you certainly could do fancy ear wires, or at least like a pink bead or something, or turquoise. All right, there's what we made. Like I said, I'm gonna, after I get off, I will add that last piece of fringe, and I will post those up. And like I said, I'm willing to try and draw out the design. I don't know, do people, can most of you, when you do seed beading, Lorraine, do you work from a picture or do you read the patterns? I have to say, if it's just the pattern, for me that doesn't help, but if it's laid out on the graph paper, that's what I work from. But anyways, there we go. So we have our Santa Fe inspired skull fringe earrings. Sure, 99% done, and we'll be done later after I get back from my appointment. All right, and I gotta make him a mate too, so it'll be fun to fun Halloween earrings or Day of the Dead earrings. All right, thanks again for joining me. Yeah. Set the camera. Hello. All right. You read patterns mostly with the graph paper, yeah. So I'm trying to find some generic graph paper that's not just this. So this one that I bought it's the same designs on every page. Hey, Janelda, sorry you're having bad weather. We're just finishing up. I had to finish on time today, so I gotta head to the eye doctor. But I'll show you real quick. Let me see if take my other earrings off, and we'll show these on real quick. Even though like I said, we're still missing a row of fringe on our one we made live, but and I will get this posted. I had troubles getting the last one over to YouTube, but I did finally get it over there yesterday. All right, let's. All right, there's what we made. Our Santa Fe inspired. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Very feathery. Huh? Alrighty, well, I will be back on Sunday. As far as I know, it's Father's Day, so I realize that some of you guys may be busy with that. Unfortunately, I don't live near my father, so I am not going to spend Father's Day with him, but I will hopefully talk to him at some point. So, hopefully you all have a great weekend. If if you're celebrating with your kids and your husbands or your fathers, and have a great Father's Day, and I will you can always catch the replay. So as usual, let me know you're watching. I love to know who's watching, love to know who's out there. Please like and follow us, Desert Cat Creations, on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Yep, my father is 91. He will be 92 this year, and I'm fortunate to still have him around. He's physically very healthy, but unfortunately he has Alzheimer's, so he's a very happy man, but he doesn't really know what's going on. But he's happy, and like I said, physically he's in great shape. So yeah, I unfortunately won't get to spend it with him, but I will touch base. So all right, I will get these posted when I get back later today, and hopefully you guys can join me on Sunday. And if you can't join me live, like I said, please catch the replay, and I will look forward to seeing what you guys have been making. So would have been 105. That's a ripe old age. So. All right, and show me what you're making, and let's see if we can get some of our friends to show us what they're making. I still looking for ideas to get more people sharing their stories, but we'll continue work on that. And we've got some fun new designs. So all right, happy Father's Day to you guys. Like I said, if you're free, please join me on Sunday, and we will be on for week 24. You realize we're 3 weeks from the middle of the year, so just want to put that out there. It's crazy. So all right, I will catch you Sunday.